Hello, Eleanor Beaton here, and I'm really pumped to talk with one of my very favorite thought leadership advisors, one of my very favorite marketers ever. That's Eva Jannotta. So we're going to dive in. Hey, Eva.
Hi, Eleanor.
So awesome to be here. So Eva and I have known each other for multiple years, and she and I kind of have this joke that there should be like an Amazon recommends. So I don't know if you guys have seen that when you get this one thing or you buy this book from this one author, Amazon will recommend. And basically, Eva and I have this kind of thing going. So if you know me and you're here because of the work that me and my colleagues do through Safi Media, then you're probably going to really appreciate the work that Eva Jannotta does, and vice versa. So for those of you who are new here, Eleanor Beaton, I'm the founder of a company called Safi Media. And together with my incredible colleagues, we have a vision of advancing a model of economic growth that nourishes the planet one woman-owned business at a time. So this is all about doing business differently. And you can't be what you can't see. So for us, it's really critical that we highlight incredible women founders who we know are the real deal and who are building their businesses and scaling their businesses ethically with a lot of intention and really being that model of nourishing the planet one woman-owned business at a time. So I'd love to introduce you to Eva Jannotta. She is the founder of Medusa Media Group. She's based in Phoenix, Arizona. She is a thought leadership advisor to some of the world's best known thought leaders. So her clients are featured in Harvard Business Review as top LinkedIn voices. They've been featured on Brene Brown's podcast, Unlocking Us. And she does work with founders like that. And she also works with emerging entrepreneurs as well, really teaching strategies that she calls micro marketing strategies that are really based on authentic connections. So we're going to be talking about this. I have had the pleasure of being connected with Eva for multiple years as a friend, a colleague, and she's also a member of our incubator program for women founders. Eva, let's get into it. So we have, this week we released a fabulous case study about Eva and her business. We'll link to that in the comments to this a little bit later. You can definitely go and check out and learn more about her. But the place that I wanted to start was with this concept of thought leadership. So this is work that you do with incredible and emerging women leaders and entrepreneurs. How do you define thought leadership?
Yeah, so I would say in the greater marketplace, thought leadership is one of those terms that gets bandied about, sometimes to the point where it loses its meaning. And so I would say for many people, it simply means expressing your ideas, demonstrating your expertise in a field, which is a serviceable definition and a little boring in my
Oh my God,
humble-
serviceable. Serviceable is like one of my favorite words, by the way. It's serviceable. So good.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I prefer to talk about what I call magnetic thought leadership because I want to draw attention to the fact that what you're doing when you're creating magnetic thought leadership, which for my clients is typically through writing, but could also be through a podcast or in video series or on stages, is you're providing provocative insights and a strong position in your unique voice, making an intellectual impact in doing so, and positioning yourself as an authority, which is one of the characteristics that helps you build wealth and power and affect change. And so what's key about that, being provocative, having a strong position and using your unique voice. So that's what I help my clients to do, to excavate what that unique voice is, to learn to uncensor ourselves, to really trust our strong opinions and provocative insights and give them the legs they need to stand out in the marketplace.
And what I think is so interesting is that like sometimes people will think about provocative thought leadership as something that is divisive, as something that is like galvanizing, not in a healthy way, that is aggressive. And I don't know that that's true. I think you can be provocative without necessarily being those things, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think sometimes that word is associated like you said, being kind of confrontational or controversial. in a clickbaity,
Yeah.
poking way.
Yeah.
And that's really not what I'm here to do. That can be powerful sometimes, but
Mhm.
being provocative for the sake of being provocative is not the goal. Rather, it's to provoke thinking. I talk about
Mhm.
it like, when you read something or you hear something, it kind of stops you in your either literal or metaphorical tracks. And you're like, oh, shoot, I
Yeah.
never thought about it that way. And it's like you see with new eyes. And that's the kind of provoking we seek to
Mm.
do with ourselves and our clients at Medusa Media Group is like, how can you really grab someone's attention? How can you stop the scroll and invite them to see with new eyes?
Well, when you say that, it actually makes me think of the concept of an epiphany. That in
Yeah.
fact, right? Because if you think about epiphany, it's that move from an illusion to a truth,
Hmm.
or from, having like the scales over your eyes to having a clear view. And that really is the gift of thought leadership. I think it drops the scales. Like when you're listening to a powerful thought leader, and Brene Brown, of course, is like one of the most iconic thought leaders of our time.
Right.
And I can remember watching her TED talk about shame and vulnerability. And it was completely life changing. Like, we're so, for those of us in the culture, it's so much a part. Like, she and her work is so much a part of the culture now. But when she was first coming on the scene and the power of her thought leadership was new and fresh, it like she was generating epiphanies and continues to do that for people who followed her thought leadership.
Yes, and that she's a great example because she's so well known. And I can remember I had a client who is also a psychotherapist or is a psychotherapist and had some of the same training or learned some of the same concepts that Brene Brown espouses. And my client was like, Brene Brown's not really saying anything new.
Ooh,
And I
interesting.
thought, and I like to tell that story because sometimes our clients are like, yeah, but my ideas aren't original enough. I'm not sharing anything new. That's not really the goal. Rather, what I think Brene Brown does so well is she built bridges between these concepts that had maybe been in ivory towers or that people weren't really comfortable talking about in a day to day. And she built a bridge from those to all of us. And that is one of the acts of service of thought leadership is you're making connections, you're guiding someone forward, you're building bridges to things that might be obvious to you or might be known but obscured and making them more widely available and act onable by your
Mhm.
audience and your leads and people in the greater world.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good insight. And I also love that insight because it's like the perfect blend of like behind the scenes intel. Like there's a little bit of tea there, like a little bit of behind the scenes intel, along with like really valuable insight, this idea of building bridges, which is, powerful. Okay. So my next question is, when you're working with clients, and I think this is true whether you're sort of working with these big names, thought leaders, or with emerging entrepreneurs and maybe somebody who's had this career in the corporate world, has a ton of expertise. Now she's going out on her own and she's like, I have so much to say, but how do I say it? Like, how do you begin the process of helping women refine their thought leadership? So, what's something, maybe one or two things that you really think are very helpful at that stage for newer thought leaders to help them refine what their message is?
It's the least sexy, least glamorous, and most effective.
Is it serviceable?
It's highly serviceable. And that is to start doing it and not stop doing it.
Oh, so good. Apply base of pants to seat of chair and press firmly. Come
Precisely. My
on.
my weightlifting coach would talk about, it's boring, but it never not works, and that's practice. Just
Yes, like the
repetition.
reps. Oh my God. This is why it's the Amazon recommends thing. I can't like do you remember reading like, I'm thinking about a good serviceable muslin dress. It's like, it really is like the getting in the reps, practicing. And so how do you like, I'm curious about practically speaking, what does that look like? When you're working with
Yeah.
clients, and what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So some of the things that block women entrepreneurs when we're starting to embark on thought leadership or making a pivot into a new
Yeah.
type of thought leadership is censoring ourselves right out of the gate. So before we even give our ideas the opportunity to grow, to fully develop in our minds or on like a messy piece of paper, we slice them off at the knees and we say that idea sucks. That's no
Mm.
good. That's not good enough. And so we get into this vicious cycle of generating ideas and cutting them off and generating them and cutting them off and feeling like we either don't have any ideas or we have too many ideas and none of them are the right idea. And we
Mm.
end up in this place of being kind of frozen and not taking any forward action. So, very practically speaking, what I teach my clients to do is we call it, I change the goalposts. So I
Mm.
say one of the first things we do is write a muse draft. And we talk about this kind of um, figurative idea of having a muse, but also muse is an acronym which stands for messy, ugly, shitty, and embarrassing.
So good. Where
So
all great things start.
yeah, so it's like the shitty first draft. And
Yeah.
really the assignment is to, and I sometimes tell them, like, cover your computer screen or turn down the light on your computer screen so you can't see what you're typing and just like say stuff.
Yeah.
Or, do like a morning pages practice where you don't put all these expectations on yourself. You just let your thoughts out. And that is a critical starting point to discover, what do you really think underneath of the layers of what you should think and what sounds good to think and what other people think. You really have to kind of spelunk below those layers before you can discover, what do I really think and why. And once you have that kernel, then the rest of the development process of your thought leadership can begin.
And it becomes, and I suspect it's really then about continuing to refine based on
Yes.
this large, creative, unruly bed of
Mm.
material that you have kind of created first.
I love the word unruly. That's a great way
Right?
to put it. And yes, so you have this big muse draft and it's very unattractive. And from there, you do refine it. And
Yeah.
sometimes that means discovering, oh, I have too many ideas here. I need to take
Yeah.
some away, because it's another place where women can get caught is trying to do too many things in one piece of thought leadership, trying to be so thorough or so impressive or so helpful that we're actually being incredibly overwhelming and confusing to
Yeah.
our readers. And so, yeah, part of the process of refinement is taking things away.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Okay. So, and this kind of brings me to, I think, where our work kind of connects, because when I think about thought leadership, which I do think is really key, and I really do think that in any creative endeavor ever, you have to give yourself the space to make these muse drafts, these messy, unruly early drafts, and that introducing an editing tool too early actually kills creativity. You just grind it all out of it completely, and I've been there, and it's heartbreaking, and it can really cause you to ask yourself, do I actually have anything meaningful to say? Are any of my ideas here worthwhile? It's really hard to create and edit at the same time.
Yeah.
So what I think about, I can remember back in the day when I was a business journalist, I was interviewing this very, very successful entrepreneur and scientist who had patented, he was actually recognized by the WHO for inventing one of the world's first rapid acting HIV tests, like fantastic entrepreneur. And he started out as like a PhD in organic chemistry. So that tells you, like, come on, people. Why? Thank goodness some people study it, just not me.
Yeah.
He was talking about the difference between academic research and applied research. So academic research happens in a university, and he said it is divergent. So one idea leads to the next idea, leads to the next idea. And it's kind of where things need to start. You've got to explore and expand to see what's the field of possibility here. And then he was talking about applied research, which is where these PhD researchers, as they start to take these ideas and commercialize them, turn them into business, it becomes more about taking that initial bed of academic and more divergent research and following one path. So we start to diverge it. and connect and bring it to a head around a specific thing. And I think when I think about the connection between thought leadership and niching, I think of thought leadership as that initial place where you're sort of laying track, putting out the ideas, building those bridges, allowing people to connect to a helpful body of work. And then the place where it really starts to turn into money for most people, and I definitely think there are already academics and keynote speakers and people who are generating stuff that way. But for many people who will then go and generate more like focused consulting, training, scalable programs, that's where we start to converge, and bring it together. I don't actually think you need to do it at the level of thought leadership necessarily, but certainly as we get more into what you're actually selling, and that sort of filter, that's the niche. So that's the filter that it passes through in order to make money at scale. And that's kind of how I think about it. I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
That does more or less describe my own trajectory, which was that, I entered the power presence position business incubator, and that was a really pivotal moment in terms of refining my niche. That was a starting place. And then the timeline was I did that, and then I entered the incubator and embarked on I just made a commitment to myself to write blog articles.
Yeah.
It was just like, do it, base of pants to seat of chair, press firmly, do it. And it was through that, I was writing about lots of different things. They were vaguely had, women entrepreneurs in common, the women helping women, economy in common, which was the epiphany that came out of my time in power presence position. But there was still so much excavation to do. And it was through, maybe 9 months of creating thought leadership that it became clear to me that thought leadership was the next iteration of my niche. And in hindsight, I could see that was already what I was doing for my clients. And even looking like further back in my life, you can see the common threads in hindsight most clearly. But yeah, it was through writing about a bunch of different things that interested me that helped me to realize, to excavate what are my provocative insights and my strongest position, what is my unique voice. And this in discovering that, my niche has revealed itself to me.
And it's so interesting, like and I think this is huge what you're saying, because one of the things that I think is so unhelpful and can hold people back or make them feel really constricted about niching is the idea that it's like this arbitrary thing that you choose and you make this commitment to go and do, and it's like outside the heart of your business. And I think, like, why would it ever be that? Generally, your niche is there. Like, the heart of it is always there. And it's like, Michelangelo said that all he did to create the iconic statue of David was just remove everything that wasn't David. And I think like niching is removing everything that isn't what is truly and authentically your business.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I've been known to gripe quite vociferously about how much I hate that just choose a niche advice, which was, I was pummeled with that advice. And probably many of you watching or listening can relate, like, especially early on in entrepreneurship, the prevailing good advice is choose a niche, choose a niche, choose a niche. It turns how I pronounce it. Sorry, everyone. Choose, and it just felt like, you just pull it out of a hat. And that always felt so arbitrary and forced and inauthentic to me. And of course, giving it the time and the breathing room and investing in the support to excavate it for yourself, not quick results. Some time, totally worth it. Feels a lot better. Having tried it both ways, I now am firmly on team niching down. What I like about the language you use is that it conveys this process of refinement and removing what's extra to reveal what's already there, rather than picking something like you pick a cardigan.
Yeah, exactly. Which does feel arbitrary, and it feels very sort of mechanical, and tactical, not in a good way though. It's arbitrary. It feels a little arbitrary, and I don't think it serves people. And it can really, the interesting thing is though, I have found that every time I ask myself or I challenge myself to focus in on something, there's always this moment of reaction or reactivity where I don't want to have to focus, And then once I get through that part, I start to see the beauty in the depth, and that can be true in all kinds of different ways. What I find so fascinating is just like having observed the trajectory of your business and like the people that you're working with, like really honing in on that thought leadership and you have two sides of your business. One where you're working with more emerging, founders and thought leaders, and then one where you're working with very established thought leaders. And and so there's both those sides.
Yeah.
But especially that high-end consultancy that you have. I mean, it's waitlist only. It's major thought leaders and players that we quote their research. We talk about their books. We're reading their newsletters on LinkedIn, because they're highlighted. How that kind of fire gets ignited when you allow yourself to choose a focus. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to continually remind myself that this process of like niche refinement is never, you don't cross a finish line. You and your business are always evolving, and there are, there's kind of the two sides of your niche, which is the what you offer and the who you offer it to. And those can sometimes evolve, not necessarily in tandem. Sometimes one's a little bit ahead of the other. But if you'll permit me to make a Harry Potter reference.
Of course.
As Ollivander famously said, it's the niche that chooses the witch. And I really feel like,
oh my gosh, that's so good.
Letting that happen, having the trust and the patience to let that happen, and to also kind of hold my own hand through that reaction point of like, I don't want to go narrow. I don't want to do that. That learning to expect that reaction and recognize it as a green light, not a stop sign. Work in progress, but going.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. Okay. So let's talk about where people can go. I know that we're going to continue sharing this conversation. So we have a very cool case study. It's in the comments. You need to go back and listen to an episode of Power Presence Position where Eva and I will put the number in the comments to this as well, where Eva really walks through some of the practical micro marketing tactics that you can use. Like once you have your niche and your thought leadership in place, these are really cool things that you can deploy to grow your company, to reach more people. You are really working with emerging thought leaders in a very practical way around micro marketing. I'm curious around where people can go to connect with you, to learn more about your work, to engage.
Yes. So really, one of the things that emerged when I was going on my 9-month and continuing just write and discover your thought leadership niche, Eva, journey was I came to a realization that I am what I call a social media monogamist. So that's one of the pillars that I stand on as a thought leader, something that I teach and get on soapboxes about. And so that being the case, you can really only connect with me on LinkedIn, and I would love it if you do. I'm the only person with my name spelled the way it is, and sending me a connection request, letting me know that you came across me through Eleanor and Safi Media. I would love to be connected with you. You can also check out my website, medusamediagroup.com. But to talk to me, I'm the only one who manages my LinkedIn. So holler at your girl right there.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, I so appreciate you, your intelligence, the serviceable practical tips and strategies that you always provide, and how they're so anchored in very valuable, truly helpful bridges, between your thought leadership and I think so many of the women entrepreneurs and leaders who are watching this. So I really appreciate it, guys. Go connect with Eva, check out the podcast episode, check out the case study. And we so appreciate it. And we can't wait to hear everybody hear about your adventures in thought leadership and niching. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Bye.
Bye.